Have you ever looked over your life and thought, how did I get here? And then when you actually took the time to sit with it and realize, you also came to a revelation that I don't want to go back here again either. And that's exactly where I was at the end of my corporate burnout with the chronic stress, the work, the career misalignment, and all of the things. I was just at a point of realizing what brought me to that space and clearly understanding I did not want to go back to that place ever again. And that's what I want to talk about in today's video, because I feel as though when we come to forks in the road in our lives and our careers, oftentimes we feel like we have to take a big leap or a big jump. And sometimes we do. Some people have to learn the hard lesson. Some people have to hit the wall. Some people have to crash out and burn out. But that's the old me. I've definitely learned my lesson the hard way. But I did want to talk about today the 3 shifts that I made once I came out of career burnout in order to not go back to that place again. The cost that I had to pay was just way too expensive, and I will never go back to that place again. And when I was taking my notes, wanting to talk about this today, especially after having a day like yesterday. If you watched yesterday's video where my day just went down the rabbit hole very quickly and my energy was very low, but I'm feeling a lot better today. I'm having a very calm, very easeful day, getting the work done and all of the things. At the end of the work day, I have a contract to look over. Because remember, I told you in yesterday's video that I was disappointed about another contract that I didn't get, but another contract came in my email today. So we are moving forward. But I want to talk to you about this because the main thing that I had to come to the realization around was, when I reflected on it, was my chronic, obsessive posture of overworking. And baby, I had the perfect recipe for overwork. And what that recipe looks like was my ambition or drive that's just deeply ingrained in me, added with my deep level of perfectionism, plus my identity and what I did being tied to my worthiness. All of that was the perfect recipe for overwork. And that was me. And that position, that posture of overwork, in addition to me ultimately being in a role that was misaligned, led to my overwork. And I oftentimes believe that we think to make changes in our lives, we have to add on more. We have to do more. But oftentimes it's not about doing more. It's about doing less, or even more specifically, just changing or shifting or pivoting the way that you already do things. So again, that's what I want to talk about today. And I also want to just make a note that when we talk about overwork, that doesn't always mean working 12-hour days. Overwork can mean you doing a project and you're done, but it's not really done because you want to do more. There's always something that can be done. I wrote down all of the ways that I was overworking, because I was like, I want to give her my real examples. Feeling like nothing is ever enough, even when it's done. I was always thinking about what's next. What more could I be doing? What could be done? What could be done better? All of those things are overwork. When I talked about my video a few days ago about your free time, turning your free time into productivity, or turning the time that you're supposed to have for yourself into executing something. All those things can be overwork as well, because it's not always about, again, I think we are conditioned to think overwork is about doing more. Yes, that can be a component, but the other component is about the energy that you carry into those tasks, the energy that you're moving through those tasks with, that's as important and as heavy as doing the task itself. So I had to realize that in order for me not to go back into burnout, these are some of the things that I would have to do differently or change. So shift number one, I had to shift from that posture, that position of overwork to truly prioritize and rest. And you hear me talk about rest in multiple videos if you've been following me over this 100-day journey. And I'm not just talking about sleeping rest. I'm talking about deep, nourishing rest, integrating all the 7 types of rest, all of them: emotional rest, mental rest, spiritual rest, creative rest, sensory rest, social rest, like all of the rest. Really finding out, and I know this is hard for so many women, but I had to stop performing rest and really start feeling it in my body, exploring what things made me feel relief, exploring what provided me nourishment and restoration. And it will be different for every woman, depending on what buckets are drained when it comes to overwork for you, and depending on what type of work you're doing, what type of industry you're in, all of those things. But I had to shift from that posture of overwork to truly prioritizing rest. And I mean a deeper type of rest, and allowing myself to really sit in that rest, because you can't do good work. And I just told someone this today. If you're not taking care of yourself, you can't do good work. As an ambitious, driven, responsible, capable woman, we know you can do the work. I can do the work. That's like easy cake work. But if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're doing everything possible to drive yourself into the ground, you can't do good work, because you're going to burn out at some point. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to get sick. All of the things are going to happen to you eventually if you're not taking care of yourself. So the first step for me was moving from that posture of overwork to really prioritizing rest. And again, if you've heard me talk about this in other videos, I had to be pushed to this space. And I want to have these conversations because I don't want other women to have to be pushed to this space. I want the awareness to start happening now, so you can start seeing the signs for yourself, so you can start intentionally moving in a way that where you're prioritizing yourself and still doing good work. Shift number 2, I had to move from living on autopilot to being very intentional with my time and my resources. And I just don't mean, I mean my time, my energy, my capacity, all of the things, because there were times where I was just, when I tell you, girl, I was on autopilot, I was on autopilot. I mean, from the moment I woke up in the morning, getting on my phone, looking at emails, getting on my laptop, like immediately going into work mode. And I did this constantly, consistently for years in my healthcare leadership role. For years, this is how I was starting my day. Just moving through tasks, bam, 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 just knocking it all out, not questioning how I was spending my time, how I was spending my energy, just doing all of the things that led me right to where I was greeted with burnout. And I had to shift that. And again, it took me putting my mind and body at extreme risk to get there. And that was the only way, clearly, that I got the picture. But I knew in order for me to not go back there, this was something that I was going to have to do. So what I did was being able to switch from that autopilot mind or that autopilot doing to more intention is just really paying attention to what tasks were important, what projects were important, what was really important to me and my life overall, and just managing not only my time, but my energy along with those tasks. I feel like energy management precedes time management. At least for me, it does, because I've always been a good steward of my time. So it's not for me like not having the time, not finding the time. It's about my energy levels. And I talked about that in a recent video as well, just about really understanding where your energy flows and then aligning your tasks with your energy. Like in the morning, I'm my most creative and my most focused. So I do all my ideations, any creative strategy work, any deep thinking in the morning. Don't come to me around no 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m. asking me to do no deep strategy, creative work. Girl, get somebody else to do it. That's not how my energy flows. So that's what I had to do. Again, just being very mindful and aware of how you're feeling. And again, this isn't about doing more. It's about doing things differently and paying attention to yourself, which I know is very difficult for a lot of us. I don't have my water today. And then the last shift that I made was moving from like pressure-filled success to what I call like easeful ambition, like sustainable ambition. I just had to stop believing that things had to be hard. Things had to require hard work, which y'all know I don't believe in. Things had to be hard, pressure filled, just in order for it to be important or in order for it to count. That was my mindset. And I believe many of us have this mindset of almost, if it's not hard, it's not worth it, because that old saying that is so deeply ingrained in us, anything worth anything, something around like anything worth having is worth working hard for, or something like that. Like, no, that type of thinking led me right to burnout, because everything doesn't have to be urgent. Everything isn't urgent. And success does not have to feel heavy. Again, I've said this in other videos too, but once I started prioritizing rest and my creativity, my entire life started to elevate. Healthier, calmer, more creative, more grounded, more in touch with how things feel in my body, all from taking care of myself. That's the overarching message here, is that we have to take care of ourselves. We have to allow for things to feel a little bit lighter. We have to allow ourselves to feel ease. And I'm not saying easy, meaning not requiring any effort, but I'm just saying things can be more easeful. You don't have to always be pushing and making things hard. It doesn't have to be that way. And if I'm honest, I feel like many of us, especially Black women and brown women, were never taught how to separate the two, or how to separate who we are from the work that we do. Some of us are so tied to our identities with our work. And I was the same way. That might be something I talk about in another video, kind of like knowing your name, knowing who you are without your title, without senior director of this, without manager of that, without strategist, analyst, whatever of this. Who are you outside? What is your name outside of your title? And so many of us are deeply tied to that identity. So those were the 3 shifts that I had to make in order for me not to go back into chronic stress, not to go back into career misalignment, not to go back into ultimately burnout. I had to move from overwork to prioritizing rest, from my position of autopilot to moving with more intention, and then moving from that pressure-filled chasing success to really being in a mindset of easeful ambition, because I'm always be an ambitious woman. You'll probably always be an ambitious woman. You'll always be driven, but it doesn't have to come at the cost of your health and your wellness. So if your days feel heavy, or just like you're always on, you're always having to do something, you're always trying to do more, you're always just doing all the things, it might not be the workload itself. It might be the way that your life is set up right now, the way that you're using your energy right now, how you're using your time right now, or a combination of both. And it's about becoming aware of how you are feeling in your body. And once you start even taking small, simple steps, because again, girl, I had to blow my whole life up. I don't want you to have to do the same. And again, that's why I'm having these types of conversations over these 100 days. And if you've missed any of them, I've linked them down, the playlist down in the description box. If any of this resonated with you, please let me know down in the comments. Give this video a like, and I'm going to leave you with what's something you can start paying attention to right now, today, before it takes you all the way down the rabbit hole like I did to chronic ongoing exhaustion, career misalignment, and ultimately burnout. I'm Erica Prevail, and I share daily conversations helping ambitious, purpose-led women rework their relationship with ambition, capacity, rest, and creativity. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.